You are listening to the Catch Up podcast today with myself, Philip Blackmore. And today I'm joined by Lionel Wilson, experienced digital transformation program lead.
Very good question. Don't underestimate the time it takes to review the project plans or create project plans. For a large-scale program, it could be anywhere up to a month to 2 months. I'll roll forward a number of years, but in essence, I am 35 international implementations later now.
Wow.
I'm not counting the little ones. If they've never actually played the game,
Yep.
and they're just general, they've come from an IT background and never done ERP, doesn't matter how good a people person they are, they will fail.
Where he talks us through his early career as an IT director, moving into a consultancy environment with the Microsoft Dynamics space, to then delivering a multitude of large-scale, complex D365 programs for a variety of large-scale end users. Lionel, thank you so much for joining me today and taking some time out of your busy schedule to speak with me. I always like to start off, and I think it's really interesting for the audience sometimes to give a little bit of perspective and a little bit of a view on your career journey, how you got into the IT technology transformation space. And yeah, just I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. How did you get into the IT technology space? And what was that first touch point with the Microsoft Dynamics piece?
Going back a little bit further than that, once upon a time, I was made in Singapore.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Obviously, the environment was all change. It was in the early 70s, and like with most of the Western world, computers started to come across. And very early age, I was exposed to a ZX80. So around about age of 8, 9, I was constructing my first PCs. By the time we got to 11, was Apple IIs and all the different makes of pineapples and mangoes, etc., which a lot of the copy PCs were out at the time. And I remember my dad, who was very much an old school autocrat, getting really upset with this compared to everyone had this idea of a word processor, and this was amazing. And I would see these PCs literally flying out of the window, literally with all the cables, literally as their secretaries were screaming, as this PC would fly across one story of an apartment to hit the deck, because he would just get so upset with these things. I remember him saying, "What's the point of having computers if you can't fix them?" Right. So I got good at fixing.
Yeah.
I think I was fixing, about 85, I was fixing my first stone virus and trying to set the speed of 5 1/4 inch floppies so that they would read correctly. All those crazy things. And fixing monitors and checking for capacitors. The only reason why I mentioned that is because it was a hobby. I've always wanted to be an engineer. So whilst at university, I was taken aside by accountants and the HMRC, saying I couldn't be doing what I was doing because I was approaching a VAT threshold, apparently. I needed to make a company. And I was doing this in my spare time, putting networks in for people, putting in Sage account systems, et cetera, just because it was fun, for no other reason. So long story short, I very quickly went into, because my background was in design and engineering. I focused on 3D at that time. Mostly around finite element analysis under mechanical engineering. So checking for stress and strain of bodywork. And from that side, I went into animation. The company did really well, but we needed to separate at the time. And that company is still working to this day. I went into retail at that point. In that time, I'd spent a lot of time with MSN. And we were creating for a product called Chicago at the time, which actually became Windows 95. My focus on the MSN side came from my background in CompuServe. I managed the Windows forums and the TCP/IP forums and the 3D animation forums. We had around about 250,000 active users at any one time, which is quite a lot on the old BBS systems and the old AOL CompuServe stuff. So we created MSN1 on the back of, and my specialty was something called VChat rooms. And the spin-off from the VChat rooms, where you could go in there as a character and start talking to people, wasn't that. It simplified at Microsoft to Comic Chat, if you remember that at all. You could.
No, I remember MSN vividly, but I don't. Right. Yeah, I don't remember.
So off the back of Comic Chat was Chat, and then Messenger came out as part of it, because everyone thought that Chat was really good. And half the team, there were 35 of us which spun up MSN. Half of them became chat hosts and became chat queens at AOL and stuff, and that was like the big thing at the time. Long story short, I went back into retail, after spending so much time there, and that's where my first exposure to SAP and early day Microsoft systems, and at that time, Navision DamGuard
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was the first.
through a very, very colourful pair of characters, Ian Humphreys and Paul Macon. And within a very short space of time, over a couple of years, we had become the largest implementation of Navision, doing e-commerce through finance,
Yeah, yeah.
through, and that was in '96. So we had
Wow.
2,400 EPOS tills.
Wow.
So HEC was Choices Video. So if you ever went to Blockbusters, they were the main
Yeah, yeah.
competitors, Blockbusters.
Ah, okay, fine. Was that quite unique at the time in terms of because it damn guarded the vision at that time in terms of a size of implementation? That must have been fairly unique because I can't.
It was. We became their primary reference site for a long while. And to be fair, it was a relationship. And that's how I've always remembered it. I've built on that because they were real characters. And Ian, even though he's the managing director, knew everything about the product and still probably does to this day. He's probably one of the leading lights in the nav world or BC world. And they went on to become owners of the whole retail space eventually until the early 2000s where Microsoft opened up to other SIs. It was an experience. And there's lots of things we did well, lots of things we did wrong. I'll roll forward a number of years, but in essence, I am 35 international implementations later now. I'm not counting the little ones. But that was everything from my most bizarre one was I was at a company which doesn't exist anymore called Rosebees. Do you remember Rosebees?
I don't. What was the business?
It was a soft furnishings company. It's for
Oh, I do.
Valley,
Yeah, yeah. No, I do. Now you say that.
towels,
Yeah,
curtains, those kind of things off the shelf. And it was great. And the other side of the company was Fabric Warehouse. It was a fantastic, amazing energy in the business. But it was clear that there was a separation between the leading light and the logistics part of the business, and they weren't listening. And it wasn't coming together very well. And suffice to say that external LDC came in. That's the venture capitalists, Lloyd's Development Capital, and mistakes occurred. I'm not sure. Not sure I want to expand all what things happened, but it went south really fast. Mostly to do with a bad conversation over a table with someone who shouldn't have been there.
Okay,
I'll leave it at that. And the value of the company dropped in one day.
Wow.
It was 3,000 staff. We then separated. Oh, well, I didn't separate. I came back on the Monday, and a plasterboard wall had been put up between two sides of the company and saying, Fabric Warehouse on that side, Rosebees is on the other. And they said, right, we're going to give you a choice. What do you want to do? And I thought, well, I see all what was happening on the Rosebees side, and I knew they were caustic and volatile. And a fantastic leading light on the logistics side had just left the business, one of the founders. And so I said, well, I'll go help out the other side. So the FD and myself helped Fabric Warehouse. We had put in water, gas, power in that first few days. And it was just me plus one other. And we had to build the server room. We then got, I brought K3 in again at that time. Between us, we got 170 shops up and running within a week or so. We got logistics up and running. We got HR, payroll up and running. That was a baptism of fire. Just me plus one junior IT person. That was
incredible. Yeah.
But, I don't want to ever do that again. It was.
Yeah. But at the time, I imagine it's quite good fun. You're learning every day. I imagine in that sort of environment, you're being challenged regularly, but I imagine the days just absolutely flew past. I can imagine
it did.
Sort of Monday to Friday went in the blink of an eye when you're in those kind of programs and those situations.
You're fixing printers and trying to work out why payroll doesn't work the next second.
And I think what happened, I guess, do you find, I guess there probably is instances of people performing roles like that still in this day and age, but certainly with the Microsoft Dynamics product as it is now, the evolution of the product over time, it's got so big that, people, you can't really find yourself doing that role in this day and age now with the Microsoft Dynamics product.
Well, you say that, but their modern equivalents I've seen a lot lately. I think the most I've seen is where companies grown fast and they're organically a massive company, but they're still running small company mentality and processes. And that's really common.
Yeah, I bet. Absolutely. And I think that's probably just quite simply through from the perspective of the individuals that are there and leading it have only seen it as it is in that business. So they haven't seen it from the larger perspective. They've just started at the business at a smaller scale. The business has evolved and they are learning as they go, like a lot of people do in life. And I think that's sometimes a lot of the time, the only way you can do things is learn by learning and experience.
That's right. But what happens is that there is the lack of experience, what happens is that they skipped all the middle steps and all the pain they would have gone through and the things they would have fixed, and realized the kind of processes they need to adopt just got missed. As an example, I'm right now at a very large PE equity company with 60 subsidiaries, 18 holding companies, anything up to 500 million to £1 billion in these companies. Some are running SAP, some are running Excel. And almost across the board, to a fault, there's a lack of understanding. For example, ITIL's never they've talked about it, but they've never implemented any common frameworks. So they've got the size and capability, but they have missed the very common thing. So if a problem fails, which is a company-wide problem, what they do is they panic and try and solve it. That's the wrong thing to do immediately. If you've understood this background, the first thing you do is you communicate. You tell the world that this is occurring. We'll deal with it. We haven't got the answers just yet, but let's get on top of it. And I'll come back to you. I'll keep you informed every few minutes or whatever it is. And that basic lack of experience is still there. And they've got very professional processes. So you've got a good breakdown of this is marketing and this is sales. But at no point have they defined the critical paths. So this is what you do to hire a person. These are all the steps. Have you double checked all of these things? So yes, they've done really good things. And individually, when they say, I'm going to tune this process, they're not double guessing the middle and high processes. They're just saying, this is what marketing does, assuming that what marketing needs to do, well, that's because they've always done it. And all they're doing is reinforcing what they've done, not looking back and understanding what they need to go back and do.
And I guess that's the value of bringing in someone like yourself, someone that has been there, that has seen it, that has done it, that can merge those processes together and bring people together from different departments. Because as well, and again, I only speak from a totally external point of view, from secondhand stories from people, talking to people like yourself. Bringing departments together, bringing people together is such an important piece within these programs. You've got a CFO, a CIO, you've got a head of sales, and trying to get those people together on a journey together and a similar way of thinking and an understanding. Is that something you'd probably say is one of the bigger challenges? Is the human element of these system implementations?
I would argue that is the tangible difference between a program manager and a project manager.
Got it. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, you can say that you are experienced. Yes, you've done lots of programs, but it doesn't mean that you know all things good for that company and that environment. And if you do, it's actually the wrong thing to do. And I've seen many times where they become God. They become the one person to do everything. And you're like a savior. Oh, thank God you're here. It's amazing that you're here. That's fantastic. But actually, it's a wrong thing to do. And yes, we can do these things, but should you? Definitely not. I think there's a tangible difference between a good a program manager and a one who is trying to impress everyone. I see a lot of the ones which trying to build their own ego. This is being very unsubtle here.
No, that's fine. I think James Downs, who you know very well, made a very good point when I spoke to him. The power of listening, as in listening to your customer, listening to the business, listening to people, what people say, and not always having to just be the loudest voice in the room for maybe your own ego because you want.
I'd go further than that.
Yeah.
I see myself as a facilitator for them.
Yeah.
I know that my first engagement with a company is not processes, it's people. Working out who the right people are, who the most difficult ones are, and make them the person I need to engage. And I know everyone says it, but the reality is, in most of these situations, you work out what they're really good at. And when it comes to these environments, I'll say, right, we need to cover these kind of processes. Phil, I know we spoke the other day, you told me about this other process that you had a real problem with. So I'm not trying to big them up, but I'm saying that I acknowledge your ability. Tell me about those issues. They've got a platform now to talk. You're engaging them, letting them come forward. But I know what they need to do to solve it. But what I'd like to do is get him to explain what it is. And then through the conversation, I'll maybe put some questions out there and direct it towards asking nutshell questions. Well, have you considered doing this? I noticed that Craig has tried this other method. And through that process, you manage to get them to come to the conclusion, even though it's obvious things. It seems really obvious what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's very different to a normal to a PM who comes in from an ERP side and I think this is the other mistake I see a lot. A lot of people think that a very good PM can make a good ERP or CRM PM. It's very different. The level of knowledge difference is colossal. So, just one project ago, we had a very large project, 180 million transformation program. We had HR, payroll, CRM, finance, and project management accounting all being firing off at the same time. Insanity, but that's how it was. The reality was that they didn't have anyone with Dynamics or ERP experience in any of the streams except for my main stream, because they realized that this problem, I was dealing with a problem stream. The other ones were considered okay streams. So I was brought on to take on the whole program, and I thought, this is a massive scale. We're going to need multiple program managers, forget project managers. And they were multiple project managers. And we did that. To a fault, no one on that side had any ERP or Dynamics or SAP experience. And they started off on the basis that they knew what they're doing. And I did try and explain to them they need someone with experience. And as a minimum, they need a finance lead who knew what they were doing, or an HR lead. The HR lead had some experience, but not Dynamics, which was good. That was fine. But no one else on that side had done any ERP. And it always happens this way. If they make fundamental mistakes, then it also affects how they choose their SIs. The SI was treated as a font of all knowledge. And at that point, without someone within the business to check them, to say that I represent someone here and this is what we want to do, they did have someone internally with the business, but they didn't have anyone with any ERP experience. So when they said, well, project management accounting is not good enough, I'm not thinking, and I was sitting on this thinking, well, that's interesting, because I'm not in that conversation. They just told me afterwards saying, well, why did they say that? Well, because this is in this. And I was thinking, that's only because you didn't know any better to challenge them on this. You've got amazing systems here called Hyperion and other major platforms. And they're trying to convince you to move to another couple of £1 million to move to project operations, which is an enterprise-grade product, which you don't need. And so eventually they canceled it all, and they thought that, and the SI, one of the big four, said, why don't we write a new PMA module or FPP? I'm like thinking, oh dear God, oh dear God, oh dear God.
Please do not go down that route.
And at this point I said, you're clearly not listening to me, because you clearly believe that they're right. I need to step out of the conversations here because you're making some fundamental mistakes here. Roll forward another while, they reached 45 million and still had nothing to show for it.
The shame of that storyline is it's all too frequent. And I always really try and impress upon, and I love hearing about the positive stories, because there are plenty of really good stories out there in the market. There are a number of success stories, but exactly that story that you've explained there is all too frequent, where we hear about a customer embarking on a journey and an ERP, a transformation, a Microsoft Dynamics program piece of work, and they've engaged their consulting partner, an SI, whether it be one of the big four or one of the other sort of common Microsoft Dynamics consultancy partners. And we will have some visibility of that. And it may well be, and I think I mentioned it to you or someone else the other day, that our biggest challenges, and exactly that conversation and what you've explained there, is we try and approach those organizations and engage. And an initial piece of communication would be, look at having your own client-side project program manager. Often the biggest pushback we get is our consultancy partner are doing it. And it might be a misconception or a miscommunication, or me misunderstanding what they're saying, but sometimes it really does feel like they're saying to me, Phil, thanks so much. I hear what you're saying, but we're paying company X £20 million. It's their problem. They're going to deliver it. They got 2 years to do it. And we're going to turn up in 2 years' time, and we're going to log in, and we're going to have a wonderful new system. And I think there's a real misunderstanding of, it's your system. It's your business. You have to own this. They will help you and guide you, but the ownership, and fundamentally it sits with you. It's like building a house and saying to a builder, here's £1 million, build me a house. I'll see you in a year. And then he builds you something, and you come back and you go, well, I didn't want that. And he goes, well, you haven't owned it. You've just passed the responsibility to me. And I think it is a problem. How we change it, I don't know. But I think having conversations like this does help, and maybe people listening in and hearing and understanding, especially from someone like yourself, Lionel, the true value in having a client-side PM and what value it can bring to a customer.
I think there's two sides to this. If you are a company with a small team, and my business makes beer, we have one or two IT people, we don't really want to get into it. In that situation, fine.
Sure, get it.
Do that, and you can rely on it. If you're a small business, you're maybe a few million in size. If that's the case, fine, have at it. But if you need to fit into a larger organization, you get caught in a trap where you've got a conflict of interest. In theory, the team are going to do what you want, but
Mhm.
at what point do you recognize an upsell is occurring to
Mm.
you that you don't
Sure.
realize is occurring?
Yeah.
And when you start to define what is nice to have or essential or core to the business, those kind of things need to be done by yourself. And yes, they can guide you through those kind of things. And that's where the limit of the local team goes, because if you need to make a decision on whether you run a certain reporting system or you want to
Mhm.
adopt a new module, when
Yep.
you want to put on a new thing to do with fixed assets or to do with payroll and the
Mhm.
sequence of effects, then actually that's where some experience of someone coming on board will make a difference. As an example, another a similar SI convinced this company to say, well, you don't need a test team and you don't need a data migration team. We can do all for you. I'm like, thinking, oh, yay.
Yep.
And it clearly came to a mind that because they didn't understand the data inherently, they were getting
Right.
mistakes coming through. But because they didn't understand the process inherently, they were
Mhm.
letting tests through which shouldn't have. And this is where having not just project managers, but test leads, data migration leads who represent you. And it is an expensive process, don't get me wrong. And that's where, if you do have all the right people on board, inevitably the program comes in very close to budget and roughly on time.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes what we're seeing with some of the better SIs is the SIs that are actually advising their clients, larger clients. And again, this is the other piece. If you're an SI that is truly conscientious about a successful delivery and having your name associated with that project, by advising your customer to get a program manager, to have some work stream leads across whether it be finance, manufacturing, distribution, supply chain,
Mhm.
but also across testing, data migration, having a strong PMO, allowing them to build an internal capability gives a greater chance for overall success.
Yeah.
So it works well. The SI has a great reference site. Look at what we did here. We delivered a great project. The greater success stories we see in the market are those where the organizations do have a level of knowledge and ownership in house and at a senior level. They're not just bringing in. Sometimes you see it.
Agreed.
You speak to customers. Oh, we've brought in a PM at, like, no disrespect, but a very mid-level PM into a large enterprise program, and you think
They're going to get eaten alive.
they're going to get eaten alive, and the SI unfortunately will be able to kind of dominate and lead that individual. You need someone that's going to push back, challenge, and even if it's, I always say to someone, even if it's just have someone for a couple of days a week to advise you and guide you, even if it's through the first 3 months, just someone, because just it will save you money in the long run. I promise.
It will. It will. I think there's also again two sides to that. I think that you do need mid level. However, again, a situation where a mid level is put in the situation of a large corporate program,
Mhm.
large corporates have very strong alphas running them,
Mhm.
and they can be demagogues. They can be charismatic,
Mhm.
and it doesn't matter if they have a little bit of it knowledge. They can convince a mid level project manager to do anything.
Yeah.
They'll commit to doing a program they cannot deliver in that time.
Mhm.
An experienced person, I wouldn't say doesn't care, but
Mm.
wouldn't care about saying no.
Sure. Yeah, those feel comfortable challenging.
I'd also rewind because you actually said that, why do you have this situation? I think a lot of this, there's an assumption that you get given what you get given. And I think that's a mistake with SIs. At no point do you have to accept anything from the SI. You have the right to interview that team. You have the right to make sure that the person who's running it
Mhm.
is capable. A good example, you just mentioned James Down. So if James came up with a program, hands down, with that a kind of a level of experience, you wouldn't even think twice.
Yep.
However, if you came across a major SI and
Mm.
beginning with A,
Yeah.
and they come forward, double check that they actually have dynamic skills.
Yeah.
And not just the fact that they've got a banking sector experience, and the
Mhm.
program manager is also from banking sector, and they've got all
Mhm.
this massive team. We're going to do this amazing job, and they can really talk the talk amazingly well.
Mm.
But if they haven't got that dynamics experience, it's actually a problem because it
Yeah.
manifests itself later in that they're not running it correctly, not recognizing the value of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lionel, look, you've obviously sat on both sides of the fence. If we sort of you've worked partner consultancy side, you've worked customer side. How does that differentiate kind of in your role, as in how you sit? Is there a differentiator in terms of, do you find when you were working partner side, it felt slightly different to now today when you're sitting customer side?
Very different realms, different people go for the different roles. I was thrown into an environment when I first joined Textura.
Yep,
Uh, and Textura was the largest Microsoft consultancy
absolutely. At that
for a long
time.
while.
Yeah.
And they had went to the buying spree, and we had 1,700 customers where I managed 600 of them on
Mhm.
as global support.
Wow.
So we crossed Nav, AX at the time, CRM, even GP and Solomon, believe it or not. Solomon is the very rarely known Microsoft product, which I think still exists to this day. It's a project management version of Dynamics. And so my experience was living with it. So I'd spent time with every one of our customers achieving, I had Heineken and Carlsberg as our customers.
Yeah, yeah.
Ernst Young was our customer.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was difficult managing them because they couldn't actually touch their systems.
Yeah.
We could only talk to them, and they would have to describe it to us because of
Yeah.
security. And it was it was amazing experience, and we did amazing things there. But I personally prefer being client side
Yeah.
because I like to see a journey through from
Mhm.
living with the company and understanding their pain and getting it all the way through to actually living with that product. And I think that's far more fulfilling task for me personally. Whereas I do give up the security of being in a role where I can cycle through jobs, and if I didn't do a good job on that one, I'm not saying that they ever
No,
didn't,
of course.
but you could just move on. And you can learn quickly in those environments, and there is a massive learning experience, but it is safe.
Yeah, sure. When I think about that conversation, do you think if someone was starting out a career like as a project manager, junior project manager, getting into it, that actually starting off in a partner channel would actually be in some ways quite a good thing from the perspective of getting exposure to a variety of different customers, different projects, different environments, different people, that actually starting there's it's quite a good way, really, as opposed to sometimes just you go into one customer, you sit there for 5 years, you learn how that one customer does it. I don't know. I'm just, you're proposing the
Well,
question to
no,
see what your
actually,
thoughts would be.
it sounds like a leading question, but it's actually a really good question. I would actually go a bit further than that. If you're leaving university
Yeah.
and you want to work somewhere and you want to be an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
what you don't do is just set up a company and start doing it, because you're going to make some massive mistakes. You have no idea about how to manage a budget. You've got no idea what sales is actually like until you realize you do it and realize, what am I doing? Or
Mhm.
this is really good, but I'm really good bad at the technical piece. A
Sure.
large corporate or a SI will not just
Mhm.
teach you some of the skills of what you want to do. It's about living with the ecosystem. They will also give you access to learning, which you would never be able to afford yourself. An actual training course, even a boot camp, will cost you 3,500, maybe more, 5,000 for Dynamics, easily. And that's just your first foundation levels. Forget all the fixed assets. You want to do advanced management or inventory management, any of the realms, retail, etc., HR. Each
Mhm.
one of those, you just rack the numbers up, and they will give this to you as part of your training. Admittedly, you've got to give back to them. You've got to commit for something for it. But the learning is massive, and you build up a great bunch of friends, and you build up connections with the industry. Now, if you still feel you want to move into consultancy after that point, or your
Mhm.
own work after that, then fine. But don't
Sure.
make the jump early. I've seen a lot of people make the jump and realize they're not really good at it because they suck being good with people. Way back in 85, I was 85, 87. I was fixing computers at a place called Mastercare in Singapore, and I loved it. Sitting there in the environment, but they sent me out into the field, and we went to the customer sites, and in Singapore it's humid, it's dusty, it's
Yeah,
etc.
absolutely.
And you'd go this and you'd fix it, and it was amazing. At those time, we were called whiz kids, and
Right.
we fixed things and went back to the office. And we had a small team there which would fix things. And there was this one guy who was amazing. He was a wizard. He would fix anything in a fraction of a second. So, and unfortunately, it was one of the situations you put someone one step beyond what they're capable of. We moved him into the field, and
Right.
within that one day, he resigned.
Yeah. Wasn't what he wanted to do.
No, what he wanted was a white coat, a lab, and an environment where he can just focus on this. Talking to people? No, just no. He thought it was good going into the field. When he realized he got it, that was it. In fact, it was so insulting, he left the company immediately. Didn't even want to come back.
Well, I think you made a really good point there, Lana, earlier on. It is a case of, you know, learning to walk before trying to run, honing your skills, honing your experience before you try and take yourself into a role beyond your capabilities. I have many conversations daily where I maybe speak to some people that are looking to move from permanent roles into contract roles that are maybe slightly too early on in their career and experience journey. And I would always try and be very honest and open and say, you may well be better giving it another 2 or 3 years, learning and honing your skills and experience before you make that jump. Because you're only and the other side of it is people sometimes maybe that are early on in their contracting career then asking for rates that are comparable to people that are very experienced. And I always try and say, you do realize your rate will have a level of expectation put upon it. So if you are going to ask for the top level of rate, the client, the customer, the business will be expecting a level of work and delivery
Indeed.
in line with that. And I think sometimes people just forget that. They think about, oh, well, I just want to earn X amount per day. And it's like, okay, but are you willing to do what is required for that? And do you have the experience? People sometimes, I think in this day and age, they just need to take a breath, learn the job, get very good at it. And when you're capable, the opportunities are there. It's a great market. It's a great industry, the Microsoft Dynamics market. Some wonderful people, some wonderful projects. But sometimes I think for people that are sort of going on that career journey, it's about just being a little bit patient at times.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to ask you a question. How many of your contractors are really good about submitting all their expenses and stuff on time? It's all done to its letter. It never gets challenged.
We have a very, very well organized back office team that try and facilitate it and manage it in as easy as a way as they can do it for them. Without singly doing it for them, we try and create a platform and a portal that means it's very easy. But yes, you have to chase, you have to ask, you have to encourage. And I'll never forget this. Actually, years ago, there was a chap, and he won't mind me mentioning him. He doesn't live in the UK anymore, but he was at the time you would get the sort of techno-functional solution architects, Lionel, people that could kind of sit across the breadth of the product. And he used to enter a timesheet every 3 months because he just couldn't basically be bothered to do it, monthly. That was just him. And to be honest, we understood it was him and that's how it worked. So we didn't bother chasing him month in, month out, saying, please, can you submit your timesheets? Because we just knew that he wasn't going to do it, and we live with it and we learn with it. It wasn't ideal, but I think it's, as a business, you do have to try and work with the contractors. You set up a framework, you try and keep it as fixed as you can, that this is when you need to enter your timesheets by, and we kind of work to that. But yeah, in general, most experienced contractors are pretty good. But there is, as you say, there is a real piece around that, as in you have to be responsible for your own business. So Lionel, when you look back across the multitude of D365 programs you've been involved with, I mean, sure, some incredibly complex. Is there a sort of, does anything stand out about a significant single challenge where you think, oh God, I remember walking in or being involved in this program, and there was a significant or standalone challenge that you faced? And then when you do look at that, how you then overcome that kind of challenge, or how did you overcome that challenge? It'd be really interesting to, I don't know if you want to call it war stories, but certainly a war story.
I think most of it's down to characters.
Yep.
And a lot of the time it's demagogues who dominate. I think that's my biggest learning. At no point do you think you've achieved everything you can, because even 35 projects in, I'm still finding brand new things to resolve, or otherwise things I've never come across. There was one with a very large office supply company, which has 4,100 offices around the world. Has had a very strong CEO and a very strong CIO. It's a good example where a program manager doesn't just support the company, it supports the SI too. You're a balanced person who has to make sure both sides are held, both accountable, and that you're putting forward both people to make sure they both do the best that they can. And when the SI had made a mistake, got it, but they were resolving it. But the CIO wanted to come in heavy-handed, and during a board meeting said in front of the CEO of the SI and the sales lead and the project team, who had put forward their best foot to solve it, and they admitted there was
They
an
were
issue.
trying.
Didn't give him a chance, and basically said that I want it resolved. I'm not going to pay you till it's done. In a board meeting, in the worst possible time, where everything's recorded.
Yeah.
And they came down hard because they're a £20 billion company. They can do this. This is not an issue that you have to fall in line with what I say. And I basically turned back to the company and said, you can't do that. They've done an amazing job. They have turned this around. They'll have it done in the next week, but that wasn't being heard. He just wanted it done. And because he'd already said it out loud, wasn't going to
didn't want to backtrack. Yeah.
This created a legal scenario. And eventually I was engaged with Microsoft, and I supported Microsoft, the partner in this situation.
Yeah.
It did lead to me leaving eventually.
Well, sometimes you have to do the right thing though, don't you?
But you have to support, and it did. Admittedly, it didn't it didn't help me, but everyone recognized and they'd get the program forward. But there you go. It just sometimes you just have to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's it. And when you talk about sort of the makeup of a good program manager, program director, do you think, Lionel, one of the biggest pieces is the human element of managing human beings, how to manage, like you say, that one character, how you manage that character from how you manage a totally different personality, bringing people together. I always look at it as like, when you look at like a sports coach, as in you look at, the great rugby coaches, cricket coaches, football coaches, they have a persona that it feels to me like teams buy into them. Sometimes people lead maybe by a little bit of authority. Sometimes people lead by example, like I will lead, I will do. But they all seem to have like an air of authority, but also I think really good ways of engaging and communicating and understanding how to communicate with a workstream lead and a CIO. Do you know what I mean? It's about being able to communicate at all levels.
I think there's many characters of doing it. I think, yes, people is ultimately a very broad subject, but the dynamics were slightly different, or anything in the ERP space. I would argue that, yes, people management is ultimately where it's at, but like your examples of a rugby coach or a football coach, if they've never actually played the game, and they're just general, they've come from an IT background and never done ERP, then no. Yeah, it doesn't matter how good a people person they are, they will fail. And I've seen that a few times before. Admittedly, you don't have to be deeply technical. Admittedly, I am deeply technical, but I don't use it to. I use it to mentor. I don't do it to push in people's faces. But it also means I understand that the area. But if you are coming from the other extreme where you don't have the experience and you are just a very good program manager, then no, that's not a good fit.
Wow. Yes, such a good point. I didn't think of that. It's almost like just because someone's an elite level coach at cricket doesn't mean that they're going to jump over the fence and be an elite level rugby coach.
However, if you're an elite level coach for cricket, then you probably would make a very good business leader.
Yes.
That alternatively would be absolutely right. Mostly because the complexity and granularity of ERP is insane compared to IT. Let's say I'm not just saying a IT manager, and yes, it's complex. If you've got an IT project, you want to upgrade a data center, you've got 30 servers, you've got different file servers, etc. In ERP, you've got a finance system which has at least 670 chart of accounts, lines of a chart of accounts. You've got at least something in the order of around about 5,000 processes you need to ratify to a core set of processes and to levels. And then you've got stakeholders. You've got stakeholders which number to thousands of people or even hundreds of people.
Wow.
And all of this needs to be coordinated at the same time. And it's overwhelming. Yeah. And if you're just an IT project manager, you just
too overwhelming.
You'll be too overwhelming. And you try and get on top of it and you look like you're doing it. You don't know what's going wrong because you're not seeing the signs that actually it's not working.
Absolutely. Is it easy to gauge like success of a project in terms of like measurables? And because when you talk about being involved in these programs for 2, 3, 4 years, for you as the program manager, do you set yourself do you have your own personal sort of deliverables in your own mind of thinking, if I can get this program to this stage, you will feel like you have delivered success to that business? Is it something that you just look at it quite tangible from, we get the business live, I'm getting great feedback from the key stakeholders. That's the overriding success piece as a program manager. It'd just be interesting to hear your thoughts on, I guess, how you as the program manager, program director, measure that success or feel success, or what success looks like.
Very good question. Success can be subjective. However, and yes, you can create KPIs, and I'll talk through that in a second, but let's deal with the subjective piece. Success is about understanding what your original requirements are. And it's a lot of the time when you're thrown into a project, you're recovering a project because the local team couldn't deal with it. But if you're starting from scratch, that's great. And a lot of people assume that because this is how the company run, we just need to refine it. That's what they need to do.
Yeah.
And I think the few pieces which make sense, if you can separate the operational side from the business, from the technical delivery side, then you create a point of allowing yourself to succeed. So yes, you got governance. Yes, you got managing the budgets of the project, but the issue is setting it up for success. A good example of that is people forgetting the fact that I don't need to look at my as-is processes. I don't need to look at a target operating model. I just know I need to get there.
Right.
And I know everything about what's going to happen. So you just need to fix this. And the problem is you don't know when you get to the other end whether you've caught all of the issues or the fact you've addressed all of the other processes. You don't need to do it to an nth degree. Of course, in large programs you do. But if you start with a target operating model saying, well, this is what the business wants to do, but that also means that it's going to take a change to the structure of the business and the organizational structure of what we want to do, and the governance of the business is affected. If you implemented this part of an SAP system or a dynamic system and it goes wrong, it doesn't matter how good your system is at all. They will blame you and that system for everything that goes wrong with it. And it's just how it's going to be. But if you separate it, the weird thing is people are more forgiving with operational side of the business. If you say, we're going to restructure this, and the head of that department or that team is going to say, right, we've got a new sales structure, which is going to happen according to this. We needed to work out this governance model, and we want to move our central help desk system to Rizhao in China, or we want to move it into Dallas for the payroll. Fine. You pay that as structure, and you make that as a separate stream from the IT project, which is running ERP or CRM. And then what you do is you match the statement of work and the PID to their target operating model. You get that signed off. So any changes to that model reflects in yours. So what you're doing is accommodating the shift. All you're doing is making sure that anything which happens, if there's a problem with that, they deal with it on the resource side. On our side, we're delivering against it. We're double checking that, is this right? Because in that TOM, you've got your KPIs, your OKRs, your key performance metrics. Say, this is what good looks like. I need this NPS. I need these value levers for my PE. All these things are set up aside. And so you're not getting caught in that rat race of trying to catch up and getting caught in that dialogue. But coming back to what ultimately comes down to, it's money and time. You always must come in under or on budget. It's 90% of programs do not do that. And they just take that as accepted. And I don't think that is acceptable. Again, this comes back from running within a consultancy and being in charge of teams. There's metrics and models for managing a project. Most important, which I, far as I'm concerned, is the metric called ETC, estimate to complete. If you're running waterfall, there are different measures if you want to run agile. But on a waterfall program, estimate complete is everything. Every step of the way, I want that team to tell me how of this program, of all things that you've got left, roughly how much is this, and what does your gut feel tell me that you're doing? If you're saying that we're out on fixed assets and we're not getting anywhere near it, I'm going to have to load this up as part of the program. And you don't give grief to the consultant who says that. They're basically saying you're lifting this by 10 days, and this has a knock-on effect of, let's say it's £1,000 a day. And if you do that enough, you can be off drift. So as part of your reporting, you make sure that ETC is constantly reported on. And what is the consultant saying? What are you doing to get that back in track? And that's a really tough call. And if they're not used to doing it, they will feel affronted. They will feel defensive about doing that. But if you get on top of that and it's not a concern, that's really important. And everyone's happy with you at that point. And the other part of it is, again, against the comms, is keeping that dialogue up. Keep the meeting short but regular for everyone. And your main stakeholder, a lot of people make mistakes of leaving the project running and they come back and this massive thing occurred and why didn't I know about it? Keep the dialogue short. Keep every meeting 30 minutes or less. And then including steering group meetings.
Just keep the information to absolutely what's necessary.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time as well today. It's been fantastic. The insights have been wonderful. One thing that I always like to ask everyone if you're sat opposite from a friend or whatever it might be that says to you, hey, Lionel, we're going to be looking to implement Microsoft Dynamics 365 global scale, are there any sort of key pieces of advice that you would look to give to that person before embarking on the implementation process? So they've selected a product, they're about to start, implementation. Is there any 2 or 3 key pieces of advice that you would sort of say, just before you start this piece of work, some things to think about and some things that you should probably make sure that you've got in place before you go on that journey?
Yes, I would start at the basis of the RFP, the tender itself.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to your question of if you're just about to start as well.
No, please. Yeah.
But I think the most important point is the RFP is ridiculously important. The more time you spend on that, a lot of people spend 2 weeks putting it together and they think they've captured everything. But I would argue this is probably the best place to bring on board someone who's experienced, like a program lead, because they can shape that from all the experience they've had and understanding your business, what they need to get into the RFP and to catch things like project management accounting, as an example, or understanding the fact that you've got 7 payrolls, and of the payrolls, they're taking us around about a month to deal with these payrolls because of all these issues. You need to capture this as part of it, because it meant you're setting yourself up for success, because you're giving them the SIs a chance to properly pitch for it and to properly evaluate the size and scale of the project. Going forward to, let's say you started and let's say this is out of your control, happens, and you sit down, don't assume that everything's okay. The sales team, not being horrible, are going to be the most gifted people at getting this project over to you, and they're really lovely people. And by the nature of the fact that they're willing to please, they will promise things that maybe they shouldn't have. Or they'll commit to something to squeeze the project plan without the project manager's experience to actually do it. It's better to have that discussion at the start, not 2 months into the program and you realize that they're no way going to deliver this program in this timeline.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I would say is, don't underestimate the time it takes to review the project plan, to create project plans. For a large-scale program, it could be anywhere up to a month to 2 months. It's really significant. It's a massive piece of work. Smaller programs, maybe the program is a 2 million, 4 million pound implementation. I'd still say you need around about 3 to 4 weeks. If just for the project manager, just given the size and scale of the complexity of the job they've got all of these programs with all these people trying to line in these 500 processes with the resource management they have on their side, the availability of their staff and the availability of your staff coming together in this one project plan. This is why people buy ERP systems, but you're expecting this project manager to come out of the reads to say, it's all good after 3 minutes of looking at it. It really isn't. It takes time, and it's worthwhile spending that time. Do that up front, because if you get that right, time obviously directly affects the cost of your resources and anything which is missing coming through.
Brilliant. Lionel, thank you so much for your time today. I've honestly, it's been really interesting talking to you, getting your views on projects, programs, how they run, what they look like, what success looks like. The insights you've provided have been really fascinating. So thank you ever so much for your time with that today.
Thank you very much for your time too.
Thank you for listening today. Please subscribe to stay up to date with our latest episodes, or make sure you watch in full on YouTube.